Blockchain Show is a podcast that demystifies cryptocurrencies and distributed ledger technology.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back. This is the Blockchain Show. You're listening to episode 162. Today I've got a special guest, Mr. Sky Guo. Sky, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Ethan. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, my pleasure, man. Since it's the first time on the show for you, if you wouldn't mind just speaking a little bit about yourself, telling us how you got into the blockchain space.
Sure. So I am computer science background. I studied programming at Pepperdine. Later, I went to an entrepreneurship program called Draper University, based in San Mateo, and founded by the billionaire Tim Draper, who's an advocate of Bitcoin and blockchain. And it was there that I got deeply interested in the blockchain technology. I came across Ethereum. That was back in 2016. It was there I started learning the Ethereum smart contracts, and I felt that it was the future of the blockchain because Bitcoin is usually considered as the first generation blockchain, which is peer-to-peer cash payment system. But Ethereum can do a lot more than Bitcoin. It supports a Turing-complete smart contract. That means you can program like any type of programs on Ethereum. So it can do much more, such as like you can do insurance, you can make automatic payment, and you can even develop like a decentralized apps. And that's amazing. A lot of people feel that blockchain would be the next generation internet. So I became deeply into blockchain technology. And I found that Ethereum also has a lot of limitations. First is its speed. Although Ethereum can produce blocks much faster than Bitcoin, but because its consensus mechanism is still proof of work, it's still like the base Bitcoin style consensus. That means you still have to wait a couple of confirmations before a transaction is final. So that usually when you send someone ethers, the other party has to wait like maybe 10 or even more minutes before that transaction is confirmed. So that's still not practical. For example, if you use Visa, it just take a few seconds for the payment to be completed. Also, Ethereum's gas price was skyrocketing at that time, and it became very expensive to write Solidity smart contracts. And because Ethereum's transaction throughput is only 12 per second, that means the developers have to pay more transaction fees to the miners so that they can get their transaction processed. And the other problem is that Ethereum is based on Solidity, but Solidity is a new language that you have to learn from start. And there are only very few developers in the world that know Solidity at that time. And that very limits the potential of the Ethereum blockchain. So I just feel that because Ethereum is such a decentralized network, it is almost impossible for the whole network to switch to like a better technology. Then I had to create a new blockchain. That's how I got the idea of Cypherium.
Yeah, that's very interesting because, Ethereum is something that we've been very interested about in this show. We started back around April of 2016, and there was a lot of promising news about Ethereum. And I know right now the price is, pretty low, lowest it's been in maybe a little while. It could have many factors to do with that, but I'm curious what your thoughts are on the current state of Ethereum, and also maybe you could just tell us a little bit more about Cypherium. Maybe just expand a little bit on the differences between the two.
When Ethereum first came out, it was sold as a world computer. And Vitalik proposed a very big view that Ethereum can connect the computers around the world and form a supercomputer. In reality, is that this computer, although it has like thousands of nodes around the world, but all these nodes were doing the same thing at the same time. And that's kind of like a waste of computing resource, because like even if it's a very simple smart contract, like 1+1, Ethereum still has to have all of its nodes to process this the simple calculation across all nodes in its network. So that means like if you have like 1,000 nodes in the Ethereum network, then all of these nodes have to process the same calculation across every node. That's a limitation of Ethereum. So that means Ethereum cannot achieve its original goal. Ethereum 2.0 has been under development for a couple of years. And back in I believe in 2016, Vitalik already started considering about some new technologies like sharding and switching to proof of stake. Ethereum 2.0 is first, its launch has already been delayed a couple of times, and that means it's encountered some technology barriers that's very hard to overcome. Ethereum supposed to have the best developers in blockchain in the world, yet there are still some technological challenges it cannot overcome. We don't know what's the real performance and statistics of the Ethereum 2.0, but if Ethereum 2.0 could support everything that it has envisioned, then I believe it's the time that Ethereum first become practical for massive adoption. As you mentioned, Ethereum price went very high, then dropped very low, and now it's kind of about $130 per Ether. That's still a lot higher than its ICO price. So that means Ethereum is still somewhat successful. But most of its success is still lies in the tokens. So that means most of the application, the decentralized apps on the Ethereum network are like the ERC20 tokens or other types of tokens. And because of Ethereum's limitation in its performance and other features, so I believe that unless the Ethereum 2.0 is launched, otherwise I don't see other a lot of adoption for the Ethereum right now. For Cypherium, what we saw first is the transaction throughput issue. We use the new hybrid consensus algorithm, which is hot stuff. That's Byzantine fault tolerance algorithm, and also used by Libra. But Libra's hot stuff, which they call Libra BFT, is a centralized and permissioned implementation of the hot stuff algorithm. And its governance is completely controlled by Libra Association, which consists of some big companies. Because it's centralized, so that means it's still no different from a central bank. The only difference is that it's operated by the Libra Association, and it's definitely far away from Satoshi Nakamoto's original vision. And also, you don't need a blockchain if you just issue a centralized token. But the top stuff algorithm is a world's most advanced consensus algorithm. And also by tweaking it, you can make it permissionless. So that means like everyone with a computer can join the network and become a validator of the transactions. And we achieve this by incorporating proof of work. So if a miner finds a valid block, then it has the chance to join the validator committee and become a validator and start verifying the transactions. And the committee is constantly changing, rotating, so that for every couple of minutes, the oldest node that joined the committee will have to exit, and the new miner that found the valid block becomes the newest member of the committee. So this way, it keeps the network decentralized. It's similar to the U.S. presidential election. Like every 4 years, the president has to be elected, and no president can have like more than 2 terms. And also, the hot stuff algorithm resolves the transaction finality problem so that it can confirm the transaction in an instant. Means there's no wait for confirmation. Like you have to wait at least 6 confirmations for Bitcoin, or like half an hour for Ethereum. In our algorithm, all the transactions are instantly confirmed and there are no forking, because the hot stuff algorithm guarantees the finality of the transactions. In order to get more bigger developer community for our ecosystem, we use Java as our smart contract. Not only our smart contract support the Java language, but we have a built-in Java virtual machine that provides the native support for Java. And because Java is world's mostly used programming language, every Android application is built with Java, and also like a lot of web application and the financial enterprise applications are also built with Java too. So our blockchain can provide developers direct access to get started. They don't have to learn a completely new language. They just need to get started with programming with Cypherium. Then they can even migrate their existing application to Cypherium blockchain.
Excellent. And I know that decentralization is something that was pretty important to us in regards to Ethereum, kind of the whole blockchain movement. But then scalability became an issue, and different companies came up with different devices to scale up. I'm curious if you guys came up with any other solutions to, not necessarily sacrifice decentralization to scale.
You mean like how does Cypherium solve this problem?
Yeah.
So as I mentioned, in Cypherium's consensus mechanism, there are no nodes that you have to rely on. Some other projects I'd like to take an example here, tried to solve this. For example, EOS. EOS proposed the delegated proof of stake. It elects 21 supernodes that have the privilege of writing the blockchain records, and also they can even freeze someone's account. But this causes a problem is that the 21 nodes in EOS are fixed. So like they have superpowers, and they can manipulate the network. They can even collude together. And you can see that there has been a lot of issues and controversies about EOS governance. And Tron is also using the delegated proof of stake, and it has the same problem. Some other blockchains like Algorand uses proof of stake plus the VRF, the verifiable random function. But what it does is still selecting nodes from a set of potential nodes or stakeholders. So, for example, Algorand selects validator nodes from 2,000 stakeholders, which is still, after all, a permission system because you have to have the algo tokens to become like the member of the candidates. And only after you become the candidates, you can join the validator groups and start like verifying the transactions. But if you don't own the Algorand token, and if you are not one of the top 2,000 biggest shareholders of Algorand, then you don't have the opportunity. For Cypherium, we believe that proof of work is still the most fair way for, and also decentralized way to grant the access to the nodes, because in our consensus maximum, proof of work is only used for preventing the hackers using botnets to take over our network, so that we require all the miners to spend electricity, and because there's a cost involved, it's not that easy to manipulate the network. And after a miner finds the valid block, it is able to join the network and start verifying the transactions. And as an incentive mechanism, we also reward blocks, the tokens to the miners. So it's similar to Bitcoin. When the miner can earn the block rewards and plus the transaction fees, and that keeps the miner actively mining the tokens and maintaining the network.
Yeah, that's very good. I think that you've got a really good grasp on the technology. And I'm curious if when you were in school, was blockchain something that was being talked about, or is this all something that you kind of had to learn, from the outside world? Because I'm kind of curious when it started to creep into, institutional education.
When I was in Pepperdine, blockchain was still not heard of by the majority of people. In our class, Android programming and web designing were offered, but no blockchain-related courses. But later, some universities like NYU and Cornell started offering blockchain classes, and NYU mostly offering like cryptocurrency and economics related, while Cornell offered like a more research and technology programming side. And now more and more universities began to offer blockchain courses because everyone can see that it's one of the most important technologies in this century. And even Pepperdine has planned to launch and offer blockchain-related courses. So they invited me last year for discussion, and right now they're currently actively planning to offer such course.
That's amazing, man. Well, congratulations. I think that you're basically a kind of like a leader in this space. It's very impressive what you've been able to accomplish so far. I think that.
Thanks.
Oh yeah, man. Thousands of transactions per second, while still kind of maintaining the security and efficiency that blockchain provides. And earlier you mentioned that blockchain was sort of the new iteration of the internet, and I agree. I definitely felt that way in 2016. I think they were calling it Web 3.0. Do you think that that's still the case, or do you think that blockchain has kind of shifted away from being a new version of the internet to sort of integrating with the old internet, if that makes sense?
That's a very good question. And I personally believe that blockchain will become an integrated part of the internet. I attended several big conferences talking about drawing a comparison of blockchain and the internet. And some talks mentioned that the internet has the physical layer the data layer and the application layer. And what it does not have is an identity layer, so that on the internet, no one knows who you are, and your ID information can be easily stolen, or you can be impersonated by someone. And the solution is introducing blockchain. Blockchain, because it has like the digital signature that can represent your digital identity. So by integrating blockchain, it provides an extra layer of identity on the internet. Blockchain itself, if it does not have like a reliable web of data, I don't think it has like a lot of use cases. Only when blockchain is plugged into the current internet and connect all the database that's currently isolated and scattered around the world, then I'd see like a blockchain becomes a part of the next generation web.
Yeah, that's very well said. I really like that. Very good description there. And, just to kind of further the conversation, I saw last year that Cypherium announced a collaboration with Google Cloud Platform, some other customers as well, like IBM and Amazon Web Services. Now, we've seen some individuals express concern over data privacy. I know that particularly Google makes a lot of their money from tracking users' information and kind of monetizing it. Do you see any concerns with these large companies getting into blockchain, or is the nature of blockchain's technology going to sort of act as a buffer to keep users' data more private, kind of like you mentioned earlier?
Yes, because blockchain itself is distributed, and no single entity or company that hold all the users' data. So even if Google wants to, say, use blockchain to handle the user data, still it has no access to everyone's data, because all users' data will be kept private on its local storage. So, for example, this is how a decentralized ID work with blockchain. You can have all of your personal information, including your name, age, sex, address, and other stuff, on your local storage. And what is transmitted over the internet is a hash. So that's like an encrypted message of your data, and it cannot be reversed. And the hash is a one-to-one mapping to a piece of data. So like if you have your data, no one else could like produce a same hash as your own data. So that proves your ownership and authenticity of the data. And only the encrypted hash is transmitted over the internet. So even if, say, some hacker steals that hash, he still cannot like get the original data, your personal information, out from the hash. And that hash is useless to the hacker. So there will be no incentive for the hacker to do the hacking activities. And also, the companies like Google cannot utilize the hash to make profit, like you said, out of your personal data, because your personal data is only shared with the party that you allow them to share, and you can choose not to share, but just to send over a proof that you can say you have a driver license that is valid and that's like issued by the government, but the detail of the driver license is never shared with the third party. So this is how you can use blockchain to protect your privacy.
That is very, very good to know. And I'm sure a lot of people listening, that will put them at ease. Many people probably understand that maybe some of the newcomers to the space who are still tuning in will appreciate that. I also noticed that Cypherium has partnered with the largest human resources firm, Randstad, which you were just talking about, keeping a lot of sensitive information private. It seems to make like a perfect bridge to human resources to kind of help with their recruitment process. I'm just kind of curious how that came into play. Did the company reach out to you and see the value of what you were working on, or were you actively looking for different enterprises to join you?
The person who came up with the idea is a manager at Randstad, and he's also actively looking over the blockchain technologies. So he looked into a couple of different blockchain projects, and eventually he chose Cypherium because of Cypherium's ability to process transactions instantly and also scale to a couple of hundred, even thousands of nodes. And then we started working on this use case, especially we put a lot of efforts into the data privacy part, because Randstad is based in the European Union, and they have world's most strict data privacy laws. So we have to pay special attention to this part. And then we created the case study jointly with Google Cloud, and the results are pretty good. So we could, we're just trying to figure out how we can scale this thing up and get more customers onto this blockchain platform in the future.
Well, that's really excellent. The security that you offer, and that's very attractive. And also, not having any minimum fees for smart contracts. That's pretty interesting, because smart contracts was something that really got me interested in Ethereum. Do you see a lot of people utilizing that feature, or are they focusing more on some of the other features that you offer? Or is smart contracts part of the basic use?
Oh, okay. Yeah, smart contract is absolutely the most important feature of Cypherium, because for any the app development, there must be smart contracts involved. And the difference of Cypherium from being a coin is that we support Java and Turing complete virtual machine. And we believe that blockchain, some advocates believe that blockchain can make banks go away, can take over the Wall Street. But the reality is that, as you can see, this month, Bitcoin just crashed 40% in just one day. And that means Bitcoin is still not a world, an asset that's recognized by the humanity. That means blockchain still has a long way to go before it can become a real competitor of the traditional financial system, because the traditional financial system, we're talking about hundreds of $trillions, but Bitcoin's market capital is just over $100 billion. It's still a very small comparing to the traditional finance sector. I believe that the use case of blockchain, especially the immediate use case, are not the banking system or financial, because there are also some banks experimented with blockchain and trying to incorporate blockchain into its payment system, but still we haven't seen positive results yet, because it's still going through research at still very early stage. So I believe that for the next few years, we will see more applications in other fields, like, for example, supply chain and digital identity, and even like healthcare system. Those industries can adopt blockchain faster than the financial industry. And the financial industry is very conservative because they have a lot of issues to deal with. So, for example, Facebook's Libra, although it's announced last year and planned to launch early this year, but they are facing a lot of setbacks, especially from the regulatory side. And now they just adjust its roadmap, trying to create something else other than its original plan. So you can see that it's not easy for blockchain to overtake the financial industry like overnight. It's a process that can take a couple of years, but I don't think it's gonna take very long. Maybe the next 3 to 5 years, we can see things start to change.
Yeah, and I think that it seems like Cypherium is kind of superior to some of these other things like you were talking about, and obviously the central banks are very complicated and have a long history. You mentioned earlier a multi-level governance protocol. It seems like even though it's centralized, it might have a capacity to support centralized application layers. Maybe even like a central bank issued digital currency. Do you think that's possible?
Yes, this is definitely possible because, like I said, our smart contract supports digital identities, and also using our smart contract, you can set rules of access, and you can grant different access privileges to different digital identities. So, for example, if you have like A, which is an administrator, and B, which is like an operator, and C, which is kind of like a staff, a general staff. So we will have like a different level of accessibility for these three roles. And our smart contract can handle these three roles separately, so that each just stays within its limit of its power. And if you want to create like a centralized app, it's no different from creating an app using the TCP/IP protocol, the existing internet, and you just need to store some essential data on the blockchain. And also, Cypherium blockchain supports both online and offline data interoperability. So you can keep you don't have to store all of your data on the blockchain, because that's a lot of data, and storage of blockchain is quite expensive. So what you can do is just putting the digital fingerprint of the data on the blockchain to prove the existence and the accuracy of the data. Well, you can keep the data such as the transactions of the blockchain and create an off-chain solution for your application.
Very interesting. And I saw in the news recently, I'm not sure how much of this was speculation, the possibility of transferring to a cashless system in the United States of America, or at least facilitating some sort of, digital dollar's not quite accurate, because I know that we've had digitized currency here since the 1970s, but some people were just losing their minds thinking that cash was going to go away forever. And I'm thinking there's definite advantages to cryptocurrencies, but I don't think that something like the United States Treasury, I don't know if they would issue their own digital currency or a cryptocurrency. What do you think would be a good solution if we were to transfer away from physical cash in this country?
Oh, as a blockchain supporter, and I will definitely suggest any central government that has planned to issue digital currency go through the blockchain route, because only using blockchain, people can feel confidence of switching to the digital version of the money. Because as you know, if like a central bank, if everything goes digitized and the central bank has like too much power. So for example, like PayPal can freeze your account and can even reverse your transaction without you knowing or without you like arguing. And like each year around the world, there are like millions of merchants suffering like fraud and chargebacks, and the result in billions of dollars lost. And that's a problem of the centralized financial services. For central bank digital currencies, the best way is that the bank only controls the issuance and the reallocation of the currency, and the ownership of the currency belongs to the people, everyone who uses. Like even the government without the private keys cannot, like say, freeze or confiscate your currency. They can like confiscate your private key, but they cannot confiscate your digital currency without your private key. I think that is the best way to design the central bank digital currencies.
Yeah, that's an excellent point you have there. There is a lot of problems with chargebacks and fraud and having a centralized authority around financial institutions like that. Maybe this whole situation will kind of bring about a way to rethink the way things are done, both on the internet and also through, monetary systems. So, maybe that's kind of the silver lining of this whole global situation that we're dealing with right now. And how are you being affected being in New York? Is it affecting your day-to-day like business life, or are you still able to work from home?
Not much. The only inconvenience is that most of the crypto and our other industry-related meetups are canceled. So that means like I don't get a lot of chance talking to other people face to face, our idea, and just to share the knowledge. But we have been working from home even before the coronavirus outbreak in New York, so it doesn't affect our daily operation that much. Yeah, I think the impact of the coronavirus to us is minimum, but our concern is that it will severely affect the world economy. And now it's kind of because only like less than 2 months before Bitcoin's next halving, and if the pandemic is still lasts, we don't know how it's gonna affect Bitcoin, because a lot of those mining facilities have to be forced to shut down, and without those mining power, we don't know if Bitcoin can still maintain its price. All those miners will just start to dump the Bitcoins they mine. So we still have to see what's going to happen next.
Yeah. Do you know how close we are to the halvening, or has that already happened?
It's scheduled in May. So yeah, it's just about a month.
Yeah, it's kind of a crazy time for Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Well, Sky, this has been a really good conversation. I'm really grateful that you could be on the show today, and thank you for joining me. Is there anywhere that people can go to learn more about your project and potentially get involved?
Sure, absolutely. Please go to our website, which is Cypherium.io, and where you can find our white paper and GitHub link, also our social media like Twitter and Reddit and Telegram. We do most of our news updates on our Twitter, and communication in our Telegram channel. If you have any questions, you can ask our community administrators in Telegram, or email us at contact@cypherium.io.
All right. Well, Sky, thank you so much for your time today.
Thanks. Pleasure to talk to you, Ethan.
Yes, same here. Have a good rest of your day.
You too. Bye-bye.